Hi, this is Annette Ross with Common Ground, sponsored by Sylvia Global Media. Today I have Kabir Kadre, founding member of San Diego Integral, writer, parent, guide, and student. Kabir, thank you so much for being with me today.
Annette, it's terrific to be here. Thanks.
There are many reasons why I wanted to be having you on my show. This is actually my first show, and the main thing that I wanted to sort of discuss with you today, and I could have several shows with you, is your unique parenting ideas, your unique philosophies surrounding parenting, which sort of encompass your thoughts about life, I think, as well. But when we first met, one of our conversations when we sort of rejoined in San Diego, we started talking about our children, and I realized how unique your style of parenting is. And I think it'd be wonderful to share that with listeners and with people and engage them in thinking differently about parenting. Some of the words you've used with me actually were like co-parenting styles, and you have a very open relationship with your daughter Jet, who is now a high school senior.
That's right, in 17.
And so why don't you tell us just a little bit about Jet? And when I say that, I mean Jet didn't always live with you. I think she started living with you around 10 years old.
Yeah, that was the first time that we actually lived together.
So why don't you just talk a little bit about that and what your relationship is like? Well, how it began, how your relationship began when she started living with you, and she was obviously she's your baby girl, but you didn't live with her at first. A little bit about your history with Jet.
No, it's true. Her mother and I weren't together, and so I was really not part of her life for the first 9 years. And at a certain point, I had a friend who was a single mother, and it really impacted on me kind of what that meant for someone to have that role.
Right.
And so I reached out to Jet's mother and expressed just the respect that I had for her, that I had no idea of, what it meant, having not lived through it myself, and the fact that she was that way was by her own choice. But I just wrote her a letter that just said, "Hey, kudos to you. I had a part of creating this situation that you're living in, and congratulations for doing a great job." And I didn't expect her, request any kind of response. But a couple of weeks later, I got a message that they were coming to visit. And so when Jet was 9, she came into my life. And as soon as I was invited into that space, I just started creating a world for her in my life. So I got a house that had a room for her in it. I dressed that room. I just made sure that if she ever wanted to spend any time at all with me, that was available to her. And then when she was 10, it happened serendipitously that her mom was in a transitional situation, and it worked out perfectly, and Jet could move in with me and did. And that was that was the beginning of our intense relationship. We had spent the previous year actually getting to know one another over video chat.
So before that, like maybe that 1 year when she was from 9 to 10, were you sort of thinking, reading parenting books, thinking about having a different sort of parenting style? Were you paying attention to how other people were parenting, or were you just going to your thoughtful way led you to parenting differently than sort of typical relationship?
I didn't have any ideas about what that relationship was going to look like.
Mm.
I just she and her mother were actually living in Connecticut with my mother, and I was living in San Diego. And so the first thing I did was I put an iMac at my mom's house, and I said, "Now let's use this and talk to each other."
Right.
And so we just spent the year interacting, and I started learning about her interests and started sending her clothes for camp and for school, and just what do you do when you have a new daughter? All of a sudden, you just love her and you just shower her with anything, any love expressions that you can, um, and interact and goof off and be silly. And so there's one great instance where she called me on the phone, and I was under the impression that she was just getting to know her new dad, her dad. And she's like, "Are you good at math?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was all right at math. And she said, "Oh, really? Okay, what's 12 times 17?" And I was like, did the math in my head, and I gave her the answer. And at the time, I'm driving around San Diego. It's kind of a spring day here, a fall day, beautiful sun, and just very relaxed. I was with a friend, and I was just really enjoying that my daughter was kind of testing me. And she kept asking me these multiplication problems, long multiplication problems. They get harder and harder. And I just kept doing them in my head, like, "Oh yeah, your dad's awesome. He can do this. Check it out." I didn't find out for a few years, but she was doing her homework.
Oh, nice. Oh, I like it. Here you're thinking so it was a test in a sense, I guess. One of the things that you told me about Kabir is that you've always had like a completely honest, really forthcoming, dialogue with her. And now that she's in her, teen years, whether it's about she's asking you, "Dad, did you ever drink?" or "Dad, did you ever do this or that?" I mean, you said you were always completely open and honest with her. Can you speak a little bit about the level of open dialogue and honest communication that you have with Jet? Which I think is really unique, actually.
Yeah, it's just honesty and integrity has always been a real strong value for me. I mean, for many years now, I guess there was probably a time before I had any relationship to those concepts that was at all sophisticated, but it has just become my experience that in relationship, that transparency and integrity are kind of critical elements if you want to have a rich, thriving, full, healthy, happy relationship with anybody. And so when I was developing this relationship to my daughter, I was really stricken with the kind of love experience that it is to be a parent. That, there's nothing this person is ever going to do that's going to make me break up with them, divorce them, stop talking to them. That's just, those cards are off the table. And so this is the most profound relationship that I'm likely to have with another person in my lifetime. And so, of course, I'm going to bring to that any techniques or tools or resources I can imagine to make that the best relationship it can be.
Did that surprise you, Kabir, that you felt such strong emotions toward her? I mean, because she sort of came in at 9, 10 years old, we're saying, and just that love, the level of love, and how you said, we're not going to break up, nothing is going to separate us. Did that surprise you that you were so filled with those feelings for her?
Well, and this might be cliche to any parents out there, but we know we love our parents, right?
Well, I mean, can you say that universally?
And universally, when tragedy hasn't stricken, people generally love their parents.
Yeah.
That's our first introduction to love, and based on that introduction, that's kind of going to set the tones for our later love relationships, whether they're friends or emotional family or whatever. But there's a new thing that happens when you become a parent. It's an introduction to love in a new context, and it was entirely unexpected for me. But I was so excited and thrilled by it because it informed the love relationships that I could have with everybody else in the world. Because this was the crucible. This was, as I said, this one's not going away.
Right.
So this becomes the new gold standard.
Right. So it sounds like all of your other relationships were sort of lifted by this experience.
I think so. I think it did a tremendous amount to help me
Sort of raise the
fall more in
bar.
love with others. Yeah, go on.
Yes, to sort of raise the bar even of those relationships. So when we go back to the point about, you saying with your honesty and being totally transparent with Jet, um, this is what I find so fascinating. Think about it all the time, because I'm also a parent. Um, that you're not a little more, well, we even talked about a little bit about Santa Claus. That was something even you felt you didn't need, you didn't, am I right?
Oh yeah, I wasn't willing to I wasn't willing to take on even a white lie.
Right.
Because I don't think that's, I mean, I appreciate the significance of these myths and fables in our cultural history, but for me, if she told me that Santa Claus existed,
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason I should break her little heart or, trample on her imagination. I can say, really? That's exciting. How cool. But for
Okay.
me to come to her and say, honey, in the spirit of parenting, I'm going to tell you a little lie now. I think that starts, for me, that sets up the wrong patterns. Because later she'll come to me as a teenager and say, you know what? For the sake of being a teenager, I'm going to tell you a little lie now.
Okay. So now let's talk about then. So Santa Claus, I mean, although I think you would probably get a little bit of an interesting dialogue if we could get some other mothers and fathers. When she says to you, Dad, did you smoke pot? Or something like that. Now we're saying, are these things that in the quest for complete honesty, is a dangerous dialogue to have with your teenage daughter? And to be, following along the trajectory of I need to be completely honest, and that's the kind of relationship I want to have. But let's say you're the kind of person who did a few things. I'm not saying that you are, but many parents have done things, and I've heard both sides of this conversation. Very compelling arguments. Some people say, absolutely, you say to your kid, no, I didn't do any of that, and you save that for a later date, and so that's sort of like, the white lie, I guess. And some people say, you let them know of your experiences.
Well,
Obviously,
I think it's an
tricky.
important matter. It's an important matter of context. I think that who I am for Jet, who I try to be for Jet, is the best example of how a person can be. I strive to be that person. I strive to be the best example of a person that I can be. And I know that I'm her primary example. She lives with me full time. I'm a quadriplegic, so we've got caregivers around the house. And so she sees other people on a regular basis. She has a great relationship with her mom. She sees her mom. These are her examples. These people set the standard to which she's going to create her own standard. And so when I show her who I am, then if I don't allow her to understand to the degree that she's interested how I became that person or what makes up a person like me, then I actually am withholding information from her that's important for her to understand how people form and evolve and make decisions and suffer consequences and reap rewards. So I think some parents do think that if I've got some bad stories in my past, I should hide them from my child because God forbid they should get the idea that these bad stories exist. And I don't know what the fears are. If they're afraid of losing their child's respect or allowing the child to believe that it's okay to make mistakes or to go down the wrong path.
Well, I think it empowers them a little bit. The child not empowers the child, but I think at times the parent fear, I can speak to what my fear would be about it, which is that I'm sort of giving the license to do the go ahead. Now, thankfully, I never did anything bad, so no, I'm teasing.
Easy for you, right? Yeah.
No, but I'm just, well, yes, I did plenty of bad things, but those aren't the things my kids are asking me about. They're asking me more about, Mom, did you try this or that, or did you dabble in this or that?
Well, here's the thing. Okay, let's assume for the sake of argument that you did a blowout week of heroin once. Okay, so before you did this, do you think you checked it out with your folks first?
No, but you know what, honestly, here's the thing that's about your parenting style is that you have a great amount of faith in your teenage daughter. Would my mindset have been when I was a teenager now, that if someone I really loved and respected, let's say my father, and I still love and respect him today, if I thought, well, my dad did that, you know, would I be more apt to feel like a safety around it? And my dad did that, and he was okay, or whatever, you know.
Say that again?
Like my dad did that, but he turned out okay. You know, that might.
Well, isn't that an important lesson? I can make mistakes. I can do things. You know, did my dad smoke pot? In Jet's case, yeah. You know, does my dad think that's a horrible thing? In Jet's case, no. You know, pot's about to get legal all over the world. It's not a huge thing. Do I still use pot? No. Does Jet know that? Yes. Did I use it recently in a medical context? Yes. Does Jet also know that? Yes. Did I explain to her that she might not want to tell her friends at school that her dad had pot brownies in the fridge because it might get back to their parents and it might cause problems for her socially? Yes. You know, does she know that the marijuana I was using for medical purposes started to affect my dreams in a negative way, and that caused me to stop using it? Yes. She knows. I think it's important to allow our children to learn from their parents by example and by anecdote of what experimentation consists of. You know, you follow a certain path. You go to church for a while, or you don't go to church for a while, or you stop going to church for a while, or you start smoking pot, or you start studying ethnobiology, or, you know, whatever it is you do. These are all experiments. And they take you places. And if you find yourself in a situation that needs to change, then you need to be empowered to change it. So it's all about decision-making, accountability, responsibility for our actions, responsibility for becoming who we are, and owning all of that, and not pushing it away into the shadow. You know, I can't tell Jet, I'm a dynamite person. I've never done anything wrong. You know, she's not going to believe that for a minute. And even if I try really hard, she's going to know. I could be a great actor. She's going to know there's an inconsistency there.
Or an insincerity.
Yeah. You know, when you really love somebody, I think it's probably in most cases harder for them to lie to you without you knowing it. Because you know the difference.
But as you're going along in this, you know, relationship that's really incredibly open because you don't shelter her from things. It seems like when it seems she's ready to ask you a question, maybe she's ready to hear an honest answer about something. You know, I'm not having an 8-year-old might not ask you about marijuana, but a 15-year-old and 16-year-old might. So it seems like kids ask questions when they're ready, I think a lot of the times, to hear an answer, and your answers are honest answers. But still, you, as a parent, you're creating boundaries for them all the time. We have to. I mean, for safety.
Co-creating, yeah.
And that's interesting.
Sometimes my word is a little more weight. Go on.
We're gonna I'm gonna take a little break here for just a moment, and thank you for Sylvia Global Radio for having me today with Common Ground and Kabir, and we'll be right back. and now we're back with Kabir and a very fascinating discussion. Thank you to Sylvia Global Radio for hosting Common Ground. Kabir, we were talking about co-parenting. Is that the word we're using? Co-parenting?
I use the word co-creative.
Co-creative?
Yeah, because I think it's a dialogue. I think parenting is a dialogue between the parents and the child.
Okay. At what age does that sort of begin? Would you say, for you're teaching others now about sort of this idea of co-creating?
I think it begins as soon as one becomes a parent.
So in infancy, when even a tiny.
In utero.
Okay. Well, okay. Then are you saying that in utero you're responding, okay, in a very sort of physical way? You're pregnant and you feel discomfort. You think the baby might be in an uncomfortable position, and you change your position to accommodate the baby. So you're always sort of listening to cues from the baby, even when in utero.
Yeah, and it's who you are, not just as a mother, but for my case as a father.
Okay.
And I have, I wasn't there for Jet's birth and early years, but I do have good friends who are new fathers, and it's recent, so I'm close to this subject. As soon as there is a baby growing in the uterus, your role as a male in the world, or as a female, it changes. And you know this. And so, all of a sudden, you're in a dialogue with these new conditions. You can go keep doing and behaving and acting the way you've been acting, but it's not likely to be very effective. So you can ignore this new dialogue. And some people do, and I think, it creates difficulties for everybody down the road. And some people respond to this new dialogue, which at about age 2 gets a voice, But it's the dialogue before that nonetheless.
Okay, so how would you then, if you were to offer somebody advice on how to develop this dialogue, someone were to say, how'd you do that? How do you do this? Just by being aware, by being attentive, by listening?
You have to pay attention. You have to listen. You have to think about, this is a decision I'm making right now. And this, and this, and this. And this is a string of decisions. And
Yes.
In this context, these
Yes.
decisions have to do with parenting. These decisions have to do with raising a person. And so you have to be as broad-minded as you can be about those decisions.
Do you
have
think
to look forward and back.
parents,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Do you think that your parents did that for you when you were being raised?
I think to varying degrees, all parents do that. Yeah, but to varying degrees.
That's varying degrees.
I don't think all parents push the envelope on that. I think that's what makes my parenting style unique, is that I lean into those decisions. I am ready to be wrong in those decisions. I'm ready to have my now teenage daughter win the argument. I'm ready to have my then 10-year-old daughter win the argument. I'm ready to understand that I'm coming at this with filters and blinders of my own, and that I have to allow this real live human being in front of me coming at it with their own filters and blinders to also bring their enlightenment to it, just as I'm asking them to let me bring mine.
Okay, but it's still your job, your unique job in that relationship, especially when they're younger, to protect and guard and guide, which she's probably not, the child's not doing as much for the parent. The parent is doing more of.
Oh, right. Naturally, those are responsibilities in the relationship that tend to fall more with the parent. However, if you're going to be a good guard and a good guide, then you have to instill the capacities in the child to also be a good guard and a good guide for the moments when you're not there. And those moments start in kindergarten or preschool.
Right. They do. Absolutely. So you're saying sort of instilling in them a sense of resourcefulness and can do, right? That kind of thing. But now what about with...
And ethics. Go on, of course.
Oh, okay. You're right. Morality, ethics.
And responsibility and accountability.
For, right, for their actions.
The whole world.
The whole world. Okay.
How does the world get made, you know?
And you mean in seeing themselves in the context of the world, a child in the world.
Yeah.
And that their actions matter.
Where else are they a child?
Well, I mean, I don't know if people always think of themselves and their actions having that much of an effect on the world around them.
I think you're right about that. And then, you know, and then the rest of us flip them the bird at the traffic light for cutting us off. And don't think that has any effect on the world either.
But there's ripple effect, right? I think there's a tremendous ripple effect.
You get cut off at the traffic light, you spill your coffee in your lap, you get to the job interview, it doesn't go well, you go home, you yell at your kids, you know?
Yes.
Whoops. Somebody cut you off at the traffic light.
I know.
It's their fault. And then you didn't recover. It's your fault. We're making the world together. Every one of us. And that's what I try to instill in Jet.
Kabir, this is a tiny bit of a digression, but just because you went there, and then I'm going to go back to our conversation about Jet and some limitations with parenting, but I'm fascinated because, you know, that is one of the main reasons why I didn't verbalize it well, why I wanted you to be here today, because when you spilled a cup of coffee on your lap, when you're driving, whatever, and you're really mad and you do something then and you're like ramming down the horn and you upset someone else, right, there's a rippling effect that happens. But in that moment, how can you recenter? How do you refresh from that moment when you're so filled with like, damn it, this thing just happened? You know, I mean, the coffee on my lap, or my kid is screaming in the back, or, you know, they're fighting, and, you know, that whole, the day-to-day stuff that keeps peace out, you know, of any given situation, and starts then and gets inside of anyone, and everyone's probably psyche at times, and then causes them, then they lash out, and then the whole thing, right? So how do you restart, refresh?
You don't get to just refresh. That's not the beginning.
Okay.
The beginning is you have to make, my first thought was to say you have to make happiness a priority. Because that's how it happened for me. When I was about 15, I made happiness a priority. But I think following that line, you can get pretty quickly into a hedonistic, kind of egocentric relationship to the world, and I don't think that's appropriate. What it is you have to make love a priority.
Yes, happiness is different.
You have to think for a moment, what kind of a world do I want to share with everybody else? What kind of a world do I want us to live in together? And then, for me, it boils down to a loving world. And so, whatever that answer that is for you, then you have to make that kind of world your priority. And you have to make yourself accountable for creating it. So you have to cultivate this sense of love, and then you have to cultivate a sense of accountability. So then when you find yourself faced with your teenage child who's not cleaning up their mess or trying to blow you off or something, and you're screaming at them and you're cussing, you know, and they draw your attention to the fact that you're behaving very poorly and not at all like any kind of example they're ever going to follow, that you can go like, oh, right, that's not the world I'm creating here. That is the world I'm creating here, but it's not the one I want to be creating here. And then you take a breath. and then you start again. That's when you get to start again. That's when you reset. And because you spend your lifetime, you spend time in the moments when it's working and the moments when it's not, remembering what kind of a world are you really trying to create here.
Is it ever too late?
No.
I mean, when you think about...
Yeah, when you die. When you die, game over.
When you think about, when you put it the way you put it, and you really think about thoughtfully, you can do so much damage. And as a parent, you can do so much damage if you're not sort of conscious and awake. So
I like to not think of it as damage,
okay.
Although in that frame you can do generations worth of damage.
Yes.
You can do damage that will last hundreds of years, but
seriously,
if you look backwards through time,
okay.
I'm one of those people that believes, on the whole, things are getting generally better.
Wow, you're optimistic.
Well, 100 years ago they were skinning cats alive in theaters for entertainment. Thank God we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So my parents brought to my upbringing the best level of sophistication they could muster. And their parents before them, and their parents before them. And they did this in evolving contexts as well. So my job as a child is to look at my parents and understand their approach and their context, which brings us back to why it's important for them to be honest with me about the mistakes that they've made and the choices that they make, and why they made those choices and what came of them, so that I can see them in context and then I can learn from that. And then when it's my turn to pass this experience of humanity onto another generation, I can take what worked, add a level of novelty and sophistication, and pass it on.
I think
so it's not about the damage that you can do, it's about the good that you can do.
Well, you're talking about seeing your parents as human beings with limitations. And the truth is that you're right, they bring what they have to the situation as they're in it, right? So in a way, it takes forgiveness, I think, a lot. If you look, sometimes if the upbringing can be difficult. For example, now I'm speaking just of the experience I had as a daughter. When I grew up, my mom and dad took in foster kids, so we saw a lot of kids coming in and out of our home that were not treated well by their parents. There might be a time they get to the point where they're going to be able to look at their parents and say, well, look at their upbringing, or I think they did the best they could in difficult circumstances, or whatever. But you have to, that takes a lot of awareness, it takes forgiveness. I think all parents, even amazing ones like you, there are going to be mistakes that are made.
Maybe especially me.
No, I'm just saying, well, you're really aware and sensitive to what you're doing, and you're doing it with thought and imagination. So I don't know if everyone brings that level of consciousness to parenting, but you do. That's why I think you're unique. I hope that more people will start to do that. I hope that's sort of like a trend when you say you're optimistic and you think that the world is getting, a little bit better. Maybe that means the world is getting a little more conscious. People are being more thoughtful about the world around them, about raising their kids, and not just like, well, that's old school, that's what we do, and that's just what we do because it's what we do. That's sort of like lame. I think that's always been like a lame reason, like, we do that because that's how we do it. Sometimes the question why needs to be answered.
Yeah, and sometimes it's appropriate to say, that's just how we roll.
Well, okay, yeah, you're good. Speaking of that, we're going to pause for just a second, and I have a really good question to come back with. Thank you, Sylvia Global, for Supporting Common Ground, and we'll be back in just a minute with Kabir. Kabir, thanks for being here again.
You bet. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
It is fun. It's a lot of fun. I wanted to ask you about limitations as a parent, limitations that you put, not as you as a man and as a father, but limitations you need to impose on your daughter, right? We have to have certain
Boundaries.
rules, restrictions,
You're talking
guidelines.
about boundaries.
Excuse me?
You're talking about setting boundaries.
Setting some boundaries and some of the things you were saying earlier about co-creativity, you know, in terms of the parenting style that you have. Would you negotiate, let's say, would you negotiate when she comes home at night?
Yeah, I would negotiate it in real terms. You know, oh, you're going to Susie's house. Great. What time are you going to be back? 10:30. That's awful late. It's a school night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what about 8 o'clock? Oh, you guys have that much homework to do? Well, I guess you could stay till 8:30. You know, you make it in real terms. It's interesting. I always thought of myself.
That the natural, but you don't think, Kabir, that the natural instinct of a child, or some children at least, is to push that envelope a little bit?
At a certain point, I think it's in all of our DNA to start pushing envelopes.
Okay.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that when the child says 3 o'clock in the morning, then you go like, oh, and you lie down. I mean, my parenting style, I always thought of as being very, very liberal, very, very free. I told Jet right up front, you can have anything you want, you just have to negotiate it with me. Right?
You
but
were
then
serious.
What did I hear back? What did I hear back from other people?
Mm-hmm.
From Jet's friends? You're a really strict parent. But you know what? I gave, every time I thought I was giving Jet every opportunity to make the decision herself. And if I didn't like the decision, I told her why I didn't like it. And let her tell me I was wrong or make another decision. And if she had to tell me I was wrong, she had to explain to me. She had to show me. She had to teach me how my thinking was poor. And what happens over time, when I say something, it's shocking. I didn't even realize it's happening. Jet's treating it like the Word of God. You know, she has a strong curfew of 10 o'clock. Did we ever set a strong curfew of 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock became the norm. Now, she doesn't even think about it.
Now, I really wish we had about 50 other moms to weigh in on this so much, because I think this is so different. Okay, what about your 10-year-old who wants to eat their Halloween candy every night?
Not a chance.
Before bed.
You're lucky if you get to eat half of that poison.
What?
So you're lucky if you get to eat half of that poison.
Okay, so I mean, how would you couldn't they try to say, well, you know what, but I went out, I went trick-or-treating for it, I'm supposed to get to enjoy it. I mean, you've got to say no.
No, you know what? I did never actually take away Jet's Halloween candy. But what I did do is I made sure she understood the science that I understood around sugar and what it does for the body. And I would point out to her, look how you're behaving, look how your emotional responses are happening right now, look what's going on, notice the candy bar you just ate, notice this is the same thing that happened last week and the week before that. And so when it came time to be Halloween, Jet understood at some level, although she's 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever, and wants the candy, she understood at another level, this isn't the best thing for me to just siphon into my gut, And so when I would say, yeah, you can have a few pieces right now, but no, you can't eat the whole bag, she understood where I was coming from. It wasn't just like a mysterious, arbitrary rule. It was grounded in historic conversations, an exemplar of good diet around the house, these kinds of things.
What about going to church? Let's say it was something that was very, let's just say, an example of a family. Let's say it was something that was very important to you. You wanted to root your child, Jet, in a tradition. I don't know if you do, but let's just say for this argument that you did, and I don't care what tradition, Judaism,
In my case, a
Christianity,
tradition of integrity and honesty
right?
and
Okay.
accountability.
But let's say it was more traditional in the sense that, you wanted to go to a place, every week and have her come and as a family, you're the father. Um, and she was resistant to that idea. Oh, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to mass.
Okay,
Say something
there.
you feel strong.
Okay, yeah, and it can be something you feel strongly about, and you can railroad your kid into doing it if you want to, and that's up to you, whoever you are. But for me, if I feel strongly that we should go to church, then the onus is on me. Well, I can just take my kid to church every day or whatever, and that's great. And maybe they'll just come along, and maybe it'll never be an issue. And maybe one day they'll say, "I don't want to go to church." And at that point, the onus is on me to understand. Why don't you want to go to church? Because X, Y, Z. Does X, Y, Z make sense to me? Maybe I shouldn't be going to church. Maybe we should stop going to church. Maybe X, Y, Z doesn't make sense to me. Maybe X, Y, Z is a divergence in our paths as human beings. I don't, this is such a hypothetical situation, but you can decide as a parent, where's the threshold? At some point, in certain circumstances, you just say, no, this is how things are, and then you as a parent deal with the consequences of that. Because forcing a human being to do something against their will, does have consequences in terms of the kind of relationship that it establishes. So, that's just what it is. You make decisions all the time. It is what it is. Just do it with your eyes open.
And you don't think, Kabir, that maybe, and I have to say now that I've met your beautiful daughter. She is extraordinary. And I'm thinking a lot of that has to do with your parenting style, with your relationship with her, and just the unique, beautiful way you guys communicate. But you don't think maybe you got lucky? I mean, have you ever tried to
Are
imagine?
you
No,
kidding?
seriously.
I did not get lucky. I'm the luckiest guy I know.
But I mean, what for people that are listening, and because I think it's so really special what you've done with your daughter, and you're seeing the fruit of it now as she's getting older. Um, but there's so many people that have kids that have it's problematic. You know what I mean? And kids can even their
Some
behaviors
came
can be
from a history
disturbing
of
at times.
imperfect technology. I'm sorry, say again?
Even children's behaviors can be disturbing at times. If you see your own kid being a bully. I mean, if right?
I've been
What?
disturbed by my child's behaviors.
Okay, okay. What do you do when that happens? When you see something that you find
I
really sort
address
of
it. I bring it out into the open. I say, I am upset by your behaviors. What behaviors am I talking about? Why is it upsetting to me? What am I going to do about it? Learn with you about it. How come these behaviors are showing up? What are they? What are their origins? Are you too full of sugar? Are you angry because your mother and I are fighting? Are you, you know, being treated poorly at school? Are you confused? Are you going through puberty? Is it that time of month? There's 1,001 things that create the conditions from which we act. As a parent, it's our responsibility to teach our children that when things come up that are difficult or challenging or confusing, that it's on us to
yes,
investigate, not to try and play the heavy-handed God role and demand that they be different right now. Like, they say, doesn't God say something like judgment is mine?
yes, he
Human
does.
beings inquiry is for us. God gets to know things. We just get to ask questions.
So you keep asking questions because you think that there is a reason. You think that there is a reason when there's right.
Yeah.
When there's acting out or bad behaviors.
The danger is the reason might point back to me. The danger is I start asking those questions. I might find out that I'm the one that's making gross mistakes. And then I might have to own those mistakes in real time, not just telling my child that I smoked pot in the 60s, but I have to tell her right now, I'm failing horribly. I'm damaging you, I'm damaging me, I'm damaging our relationship. That happens.
You mean you've actually done that?
We all do that. Anybody that's you, me, watching this, anybody listening, we have all, anybody that says they haven't created ugly, chaotic horror in their relationships on an almost weekly or if not daily or maybe some cases hourly basis is lying to themselves and everybody else. I fail all the time to be the kind of human being that I think is appropriate. And if I don't address that in real time, if I just pretend that it doesn't happen, good luck with that.
But then how do you not get so discouraged that you won't just give up? I mean, if you're as you're looking at that honestly, like
I have countless successes. There's nothing to discourage me. I never fail. Jed and I pretty much don't close a conversation without love in the air.
Yes, I'm saying earlier when you said that about yourself, that if you don't admit to yourself that at times you can be the creator of chaos and the creator of, you know, dysfunction yourself as a parent, as just a human being on the planet, how do you not become so discouraged by the fact that, you know, you got to keep on trying to get it right?
Well,
how do you keep yourself motivated?
Because I have successes. I know we're getting short on time, but I want to tell you one more story about Jed. Okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Jed, because I'm open with her and I talk to her and I'm honest with her, she does the same thing with me. So, you know, I'm hearing about all the way her friends are misbehaving. I'm hearing about all of the things, the chaos, the relationships that these kids are in. I mean, from way back, from like probably that she started to understand our relationship well enough by the time she was 12 or 13. I started like, man, she was my direct line to her life. And so her friend comes over one day and I'm like, so, friend, what's up with this? He was treating his girlfriend poorly, like freshman year. And I said, what's up with this? He turns to Jed, he says, you tell your dad everything? She goes, pretty much. And so that continues today. Now, today, Jed's got, you know, I sent her to the Amazon to try a hallucinogenic plant substance because I thought that was important to open her mind to new ways of understanding and interacting with the world. Not to get her hooked on drugs, but to get her in a sacred place, in a sacred situation, to have a sacred experience. Now, how does that translate at home? Well, she's got a friend who sells drugs, who uses hallucinogens, who, you know, invites her to do the same. She just looks at him and smiles. She's just like, you know, that's silly behavior. I don't want to have any part of it, you know. And then another friend says, hey, why are you no fun? Why don't you come drinking with us on the weekends? And then she just looks at him and he goes, oh, yeah, right, because you know how to behave. And then that same friend comes over and I say, hey, what's this? I hear that you're drinking on the weekends. And then I can have a living conversation with him, with her friends, because I'm giving them an example of being in integrity with her. And now her friends can come to me and we can have an open dialogue. I talked to him last weekend. Maybe he'll drink less now. I don't know. I hope so. But I do know that he comes to me and he says, hey, that conversation was really helpful. I brought it up with my parents. And I think we're making progress trusting each other again.
Do you think it's because there's not a lot of fear of judgment, of your judgment?
I'm as fallible as anybody.
You know,
Judgment ain't for me.
you just don't want to be, I mean, not considered a loose parent, but I mean, do you ever fear that'll be the backlash?
Who cares? I mean, if these other parents don't like my parenting style, that's their business. Is my child displaying incredible work ethic, getting straight A's in senior year, like being a role model for her peers, making me happy as a clam and behaving as happy as I could ever hope for her to be? She's 17 years old, almost 18. She's happier than anybody I know. I don't care what other parents think about my loose parenting style.
Yeah, if that's what we would call it. Because as you said, at the end of the day, and at the end of every day, or the end of your conversations with Jet, it's about love.
And I'd love to have the conversation with those parents. If they wanted to talk to me, let's do it. And you know what? It happened once. The parent said, I noticed there's a little cat fight going on between our girls. Like, we should talk about it. I said, great, call me.
And did they?
No, they wanted to accuse Jet of it being her fault and it being, it's understandable it's happening. You're a single father. You know, whatever.
Right, right. Well, that was their way of like just sort of like
avoiding.
Yes, exactly. But you have a great love for your daughter. She has a great love for you, and you would say that's like the theme of your life together. And that she feels completely loved by you and completely accepted.
Yeah. I told her the other morning, what I hope for her in this life is that she be of service and that she be fulfilled and aware and happy.
Mm.
And already she's doing all of those things. I mean, I'm not planning on it, but I'm not afraid of dying anymore because she's good to go.
Well, Kabir, I cannot thank you enough for that. Makes me really emotional. I hope you're not going anywhere. As a matter of fact, I hope what you'll do is do a series of shows with me about some different topics. This one being about your relationship with Jet and your unique parenting style. Thank you so much for being with me on Common Ground today, and thanks to Sylvia Global for sponsoring the show.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Annette and Carl and Gail and everyone. It's been wonderful.